And so today, Julie, we learned that the North Carolina State Supreme Court itself, so the same body in question that this race is, pertaining to, is weighing in. So what did we learn today, and how is this figuring into all of the developments we've seen here?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's an ongoing saga. I mean, you and I have talked about this extensively. The latest news from today is that the state Supreme Court has said we're going to pause this. They've put out a stay for the decision that the Court of Appeals had made on Friday. Now, the Court of Appeals sided with Jefferson Griffin. He's the one challenging this race. After 2 recounts, Justice Allison Riggs is in the lead with only really 700 votes. But he's saying around 60,000 of these votes were invalid because of improper voter registration, not proper identification. A lot of these are mail-in ballots, overseas voters, military voters. We have learned that a lot of these have come from a database issue. Some of these voters have gone and said, hey, like, I checked with my Board of Elections, I'm good to go. Like, maybe I had a hyphenated last name and that's why there was a system error. I didn't really catch that. But the Court of Appeals said, we need every single voter to go and do that. All 60,000. They got 15 days per the Court of Appeals. However, today the state Supreme Court jumped in and said, let's pause this, and now it's just kind of up in the air.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of interesting, some of your reporting that stuck out to me is the putting the face to the actual issue. So when we talk about votes and we talk about, 700 plus votes, people are thinking in numbers, but you've actually spoken with folks who are, their vote is the one, among those 60,000 being challenged. What are these people telling you?
They're very upset. I think anyone that I've spoken with on this list that has gotten this notice, they first learned about it from the Republican Party. A lot of people on this list are Democrats, so it's upsetting to hear it from not their own party, not the party that they probably voted in favor of. And there wasn't a whole lot of explanation. I spoke to one woman in Hillsborough who, got a card in the mail from the GOP that says your vote is impacted by this, but it didn't explain what she did wrong. And she's the one who had to go to the Board of Elections and figure that out for herself. So it puts a lot of pressure on the voters, even from the beginning when they first got this notice, to figure out, what does that mean? Why am I on this list? But now to put the pressure on them to go and figure this out themselves, plus putting pressure on the Board of Elections to get this notice out in a timely manner. I mean, some of these counties are still impacted by Helene. Some of these counties are impacted by wildfires. So there's a lot already going on. They were already upset. And so on top of that, to have that confusion, I'm sure a lot of them are relieved that we have this stay to kind of figure out some of those details, because those questions really hadn't been answered by either party yet. Yeah,
and just to recap, I mean, we're hearing that if these folks do not go ahead and prove and verify, who they, say they are, that their vote will be thrown out. And you're saying you've been digging into this. It's just this race, right? Correct. None of the other races that these same voters have voted in, correct?
Yeah, and that's another question mark people have, is why just this one? Of course, this one has a lot more attention because it was so close, and because a lot of these people are Democrats and likely voted for Allison Riggs, this could very likely overturn the election. What's really interesting, too, is that these two courts we're talking about are the two courts that both these people are currently sitting on. So Allison Riggs, as it stands now, is on the state Supreme Court. Now, she has recused herself from any matters that are relating to this litigation, of course. And then Jefferson Griffin is on the Court of Appeals. This was a 3-person panel that made this decision, so he was not a part of that. Although he didn't publicly recuse himself, he could have been assigned to this case. So that's what's interesting, too, is these are the people's colleagues that are making these decisions. And so there's a lot of pieces that go into that that make this particular race a lot more interesting than some others. But yeah, it does only impact the state Supreme Court race. Your ballot wouldn't be thrown out for, say, the presidential or even any other small local elections.
Yeah, you're right in saying there's a whole lot of nuance here. And I think, especially for those folks who are, directly wrapped up in it, but also the rest of us who are watching this all play out, I think we're all learning a lot about how the system is working as far as like the processes in play. And, it is interesting to think that you have these folks who are involved in the race. They're also involved on some of the legal bodies making decisions on the race, although it looks like they're trying to take steps back individually. we are expecting this obviously not to be the end, because this is a temporary pause, correct?
Correct. And honestly, I'm not quite sure when the end will come. I don't think a lot of people have an answer to that question right now. I will say it seems like it's going in the direction that this will be decided in federal court. At this point, it has kind of bounced around every court it can in the state of North Carolina. And there was a decision months ago that we covered of deciding should this stay to the state or go to federal court. It was decided then it should stay with the state, and that's why it went to the appeals court. But at this point, where does it go now is really the question, and I think that answer is going to be the federal court, and so it just might mean this race goes on for even more months. There's not really an end in sight at this point.
Yeah, certainly wild to think. Well, we appreciate you keeping us updated on this big story, on the political front for North Carolina.